So I know that these matters of chairs are supposed to be edifying and entertaining and moving and all of those sorts of things. I'm afraid mine won't be. It's a very plain story. There'll be other meetings later on in Soho, I'm sure, if you want something exciting. My drinking is very dull. Alcoholic drinking, I don't think, is terribly interesting. What is interesting about it, for me, is its alcoholic characteristics. It's not the consequences that are particularly relevant. It's what it is about my drinking that makes it alcoholism as opposed to a bad habit or childish excess or the response to a terrible childhood or any of the other reasons that people might drink. What makes me an alcoholic, or the features of my drinking which tell me I'm an alcoholic, are twofold. Firstly, of course I enjoyed drinking, but when I wasn't enjoying it, I still went at it hell for leather. Even when I was having a rotten time, when I knew that were I to drink a few more drinks, I'd end up going down a very dark path indeed and get arrested or cause trouble, I would leave perfectly genial company to go a-roving around the city looking for fights to get into or difficult situations to then have to exfiltrate myself from. The only thing which explains those phenomena and many other is that I drink buckets when I drink because that's how I'm built, not because of anything. It just is. And if that is the case, it will always be the case. And I'm like that with many other things too, so I must be very careful. There are lots of things that I don't do anymore. That's the first thing. Now, that's not a problem in itself. I had a friend at school whose parents were both alcoholics, and he tried drinking on a few occasions and discovered, to his horror, that the family curse had been passed down to him, wasn't a recessive gene. And he made the decision at 15, you know what, I better not drink, because if I carry on, I'm going to end up like them, his parents. And he hasn't. And it's, decades later. He's fine. The second feature of my drinking which makes it alcoholism is the fact that no end of terrible experience will consistently keep me away from the first drink. There are going to be moments when the thought of a drink occurs to me and will simply appear to me to be a good idea. And the moments at which that happens are not necessarily distressing or joyful. There is nothing that links them at all. It's not because I have a resentment or because I haven't been to a meeting. I've been walking along the road with a sponsee after a meeting and I see something and I think I could drink that. There is no protection against such thoughts arising. It is true, since I've been sober, the thought of drinking and the thought of doing all sorts of other things crops up in my mind with increasing rarity. I'm tempted far less often than I used to be, but very occasionally the thought is there, the temptation is there. So the solution for me certainly cannot be to eliminate those thoughts, because first of all I can't, and secondly I would have to give in to just one of those thoughts for it to be curtains. One doesn't have to be in AA for very long before encountering people who slip and are unable to come back. Some because they die, others because they attempt to come back and find they cannot, even though they want to and everyone else wants them to, and all of the help is there, all of the information is there. There is no apparent block, yet they are unable to. If I were to drink again, I may never come back. So I must never have the first drink. There's a phrase in English, the thought occurred to me, and I think this is very instructive, because what it tells me is that I don't go and have a thought as I might go and have a sandwich. The thought arises and happens to me. I'm the recipient. of at least the first thought of a train of thought. What I then do with that thought is up to me. Now, my problem, if I'm at the centre of my universe, if I'm the highest court in my land, if I'm the supreme authority, if I'm the bee's knees, when the thought of a drink occurs to me, unencumbered as it is by any sense of threat, I will have a drink. Why? Because it's my thought, and therefore it is a good thought. That's how my thinking works. Every thought I have comes with a seal of approval, given by me to my own thoughts, by virtue of not their truth or their validity or their usefulness, but by virtue of the fact that they're mine. And this has always been my problem, is that thoughts occur to me, even very upsetting ones, and I will think, well, that's true. I've never had a thought about a fearful thought or a resentful thought and immediately thought, well, that's untrue. I might have thought, I don't like this. I'd rather not be frightened. I'd rather not be resentful. But my first instinct is not to say, well, it's untrue. I have to work quite hard to discern the untruthfulness of my thoughts. In the meantime, I've got to get on with my life. I've got to get on with my day, which means I need a system to live by other than the thought that has just occurred to me. And that's where the programme comes in. I tried stopping drinking for the first time when I was 18. I had what then would have been called a nervous breakdown. You never hear of those anymore, do you? Have you met anyone that's had a nervous breakdown? I'm sure the phenomenon still exists, but I bet it's got a fancy name now, a different one. But I had then the fashionable thing, which was the nervous breakdown. Listening to the Piaf song Les Blouses Blanches, thinking I'm going to be taken away by the men in the white coats any minute. So I'm going to stop drinking. And I damn well did for a while. And then I started again. And this persisted for a number of years until I first darkened the doors of AA. And I loved AA, I have to say, from the very first meeting. But over the first 6 months of being in AA, I, to my consternation and surprise, repeatedly drank. And again, there was no red thread running through those drinking episodes. There was nothing to connect them. There were no circumstances, no particular emotions, no particular thoughts. Some had premeditation, some had none. Some were spontaneous, some were planned out. Some were in response, apparently, to a dramatic situation. But were they really? Because I also drank again on very undramatic situations. It turned out I was one of those people, and I believe I still am one of those people, that has needed to do precisely everything that AA asks me to do in order merely to stay sober, let alone have anything else. I was a mixture of things as a child. I was a goody two-shoes in some ways, but I had a malicious and malevolent and deceitful streak to me that I did other things too, but very carefully covered my tracks. But I knew what being a good boy looked like, and it was simply do as you're told, and even if you disagree with it, just get on with it anyway, and then you'll find out, then you'll see. And when I started to adopt that approach in AA, a remarkable thing happened. The drinking episodes stopped. I'm avoiding the word relapse because I think one can only relapse if one's recovered. I hadn't recovered. I was simply continuing to drink because I hadn't been treated. It wasn't a relapse. It was just continue. The alcoholism was unabated. But when I started to do precisely everything that I was told to do, the drinking stopped. And that was well over 31 years ago now. So I know it works, that what they said was true. And the package deal, for a package deal it is very straightforward. Lots of meetings. A housewife in Wimbledon told me in 1993 to go to no fewer than 2 meetings a week. And she's never called me up to rescind the order. So I still do that. I actually go to plenty more on occasion. I have a sponsor to whom I tell the truth. Eventually. Eventually is a stretchy word. I've become quicker because it's in my interests to tell the truth. I took the steps promptly in the first year to put out the fires, which it did. I tried subsisting, as they say, on steps 10, 11 and 12, thinking, well, I've done 1 through 9 now, no need to look at those again. That didn't work out so well. I've, for at least 16, 17 years, gone through the steps, all of them on a regular basis. And when I do that, my life is significantly better. And I am certain, for lots of reasons I won't go into right now, that I'm far more secure when it comes to drink and other behaviours than I would be otherwise. This alcoholism seems to be a condition where the treatment is ongoing growth, not reaching a particular plateau and staying there. Because, you see, when one is staying stuck, one feels as though one is on a plateau, one is actually on a downward escalator. You don't necessarily feel the motion, but it's happening. The tide is always nibbling away at the cliffs. I need to be doing something. And so I've got to stay ahead of it. Now, the side effect, the positive side effect of that is continued improvement in every area of my life. Part of the rubric is what happened, what we were like, what happened, which is I took the steps and continue to take the steps, and what I'm like now. I have an occupation. I used to refer to it rather conceitedly as a career, but in step 3 it suggests that I turn my will and life over to God and that I have a new employer, which is God. So whatever else I do is not it's at most a side hustle. It might occupy me for many hours a day, but my real job is to do the work that God asks me to do. And that doesn't single me out. Saying that so bluntly does not single me out, because what the programme suggests is that God seems to have a job for everyone to do individually. So the fact I've got one doesn't preclude anyone else from having a job for God. Everyone's got their own. I've got mine. There's nothing grand or interesting about it. I'm simply to ask God in the morning, what shall I do today? And then do it. And the doing it, the thing that I do is 3 things. Number 1, I have to look after myself. I have to keep the show on the road. I'm of no good to anyone else if I'm in a devil of a state myself. Secondly, I must fulfil my obligations at work, to sponsees, to my family, in the home, to my other half. I've been married together for 20 years very happily. We've never argued, thanks to the programme. I fulfil my obligations. There are many other obligations too, and then I have to enjoy myself, which I do enormously. If I didn't, I'd be useless, because who would want to take a course of action which would result in being as miserable as the person suggesting it? adore my life. I wake up at 5:30 in the morning, raring to go, excited about the day. And that is increasingly so with time. It doesn't wear off. It's progressive in the same way that alcoholism is progressive. My 15 minutes is up, so I'm going to stop there. But I'm looking forward enormously to hearing what you all have to say. Thank you.